Good afternoon. If you're in North America, I think certainly continental United States, we can officially say good afternoon to everybody, except to Hawaii. But for those of you joining internationally, welcome, good evening, good morning, whatever time zone it is for you. My name's Andrew Marsh. I run our customer solutions team at Platform 3. We're a team at Platform 3 of specialists dedicated to addressing your business complete data. We help you archive your legacy applications. We help decommission apps and migrate data by connecting with your legacy systems. And we streamline that migration and archival process. And ideally, we do it without costing $1 million. With me on the phone today, I have Kevin Navin. Kevin oversees our delivery projects for the organization. And we have Rani Angamathu on the phone, and she's one of our technical specialists. Rani's actually instrumental in helping our customers, actually in the trenches, helping our customers achieve their goals with their archiving projects over the past several years. So it's great that these guys have the opportunity to join today. I'm the one who speaks about theory and best practice, while these guys are actually responsible for deploying what I'm pitching or selling to our customers. I tend to lean heavily on them to bring me up to speed on what we're actually delivering to our customers. So, Rani, Kevin, happy to have you with me for the session today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, I think it makes sense that before we jump into the topic at hand, let me provide or start with some context. We're here to talk today about application archival, and more specifically, we're going to talk about archiving legacy HR and payroll applications. So for anyone on this thread that doesn't know, I'll give you a brief explanation of what application archiving is, what it isn't, and then we'll dive into the HR use cases specifically. So application archiving at its core, it's about taking historical HR data and payroll, everything from employee records, payroll reports out of an old system that's been retired and moving it into a secure and compliant and cost-effective archive. For example, we have many conversations lately about ADP EV5. That must be some compelling event with EV5 specifically, but these customers are moving to Workday or Ceridian. And the way that those migrations work to that Workday or those new projects is they migrate a few months or maybe up to a year's worth of legacy data and leave the rest behind in the legacy system. Now, if anyone that's already done this or is considering this, you might see already the challenge this presents. What you're left with really is years of legacy data in a business complete state in your legacy application. So you still need access to that data, whether it's legal, compliance, or business reasons. And the legacy vendor will continue to charge you for access. They'll charge you for licenses, support, maintenance, upgrades, hardware, infrastructure, and so on. Alternatively, if you're using a hosted solution, the legacy vendor may offer a ramp down period from 3 to 12 months to get that data out of your legacy system before they shut it down. So application archiving really is the process of taking all that legacy content, which, by the way, includes both data and documents. That's why I use the term content, and moving it into a low-cost platform as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Then provide access to that content with a simple UI that's familiar enough to your end users so that they don't have to waste time and money retraining on a new platform. So let me be clear about what application archival is not. Application archival is not a backup, and it's not a simple database lift and shift migration to an updated database structure like SQL or Postgres that you provide access to it with a tool like dbeaver or SSDM or any other online tools. Application archive is data, documents, metadata, relationships, schemas, migrated with comprehensive chain of custody, reporting, compliance, and supporting formal policy-based retention and disposition. All the things that allow you to confidently access and dispose of that content in a compliant manner and give you a defensible position for any legal or audits that may come your way. So now we've established what application archive is. Let's bring the experts in to the conversation. Kevin, we were chatting, I guess, yesterday or the day before about the 3 most common patterns we see, correct? How would you classify them?
Yeah, correct. So when, we see the most 3 general buckets that sort of the archival or retention categories that we have. And the first one is application retirement, where it's just a retention requirement. For example, companies that go through divestitures or mergers and acquisitions. And so the data isn't really used for daily business purposes so much, but there's a legal obligation to retain it. So those tend to be more of a set and forget sort of scenario where you put the data in the archive, manage it until its life cycle has been completed, and then remove it, and then thereby removing your legal obligation for the data. The next category that we see is archiving to address strategic systems that are replacing the legacy, and this would be a lot of times your financial systems. So companies typically have a long history of using the application, and there's large amounts of data that we would call business complete, right? A sales order has been completed, or purchase order has been completed, and typically in those scenarios, they'll move 1, 2, 3 years of data to the new strategic platform, and then they'll have this legacy data there again for retention purposes. But what we see there is they'll tend to be accessing that data more frequently, at least initially, and then that pretty much dies on pretty quick. Again, because the data is churning, new data is coming in, and that's what they run their business on. The third use case is for customers that retire an application but still have active usage requirements. So they need to, on a very regular basis, go back and look at historical information. So like, for instance, a customer service department where they sell products really long life cycles, 20 years sometimes. In fact, they're going to always go back and look for that information. HR is very similar. HR fits into that third category where the archive data is going to have some frequency of being accessed. It's going to be accessed with some very specific purposes. And while in the other scenarios that I described, access pretty much is minimal in the archive, HR data usage tends to be much more consistent over time. Frequent like calls from previous employees, previous managers or existing managers getting information on employees, those types of things. And so much of that data wasn't carried over into the new payroll benefit system. So they tend to have a more steady access requirement over time versus the other two that are infrequent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, so those other two, right? You'll see these huge spikes of access. Everyone wants to make sure they can access their data when it's been archived. Once they've confirmed that, the actual utilization drops way off, usually within 30 to 60 days. Whereas, like you pointed out, Kevin, right, the HR systems it'll drop off, but you tend to have sort of steady access going forwards.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
For HR specifically, Kevin, what type of scenarios are we seeing among our customers? Like what are the patterns that we see for HR?
Yeah, we've really seen 2 patterns materialize over the last few years, and the first pattern is they've just completed like their new migration to their new HR system, and it's kind of dawned on them that they've got to retire the old system at some point in time. So they've gone through pretty arduous task of working with a new vendor, getting all the HR use cases fulfilled and getting up and running on that. And now they've had a chance to catch their breath, and now they've got to figure out, well, what do we do with what's left over? What are our use cases, our business needs for the data that remains? So that's the first one. The second one is they've been sort of leaning on the legacy HR system as an archive, but it's finally come to a point in time where it's just too hard to maintain, too costly to maintain. They're finally being pushed out of it. So what they have in the second scenario, they actually have a pretty good feel for how they're going to access legacy data because they've been doing it for so long. So that's probably, if you look at, they both are going to have the same needs, but in the second scenario, they've pretty well established what those needs are because, again, they've been using the legacy HR system much as a very costly archive to them.
Got it. Yeah, like I was thinking as you were talking there, they're basically the same thing except for the amount of time that's passed since they moved to that new system, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So when we talk to customers in that first sort of scenario, the conversation is a little ambiguous because they don't really know what they're going to be asked for week in and week out. They think they know, but they don't have a track record. So they're when it comes to defining their use cases, it's a little more vague there. So when designing the archive system, you need to be able to have something that can be easily adapted to as their needs are realized. So that's the benefit of having a fully robust archive, is that they may not know what they don't know at the time of archiving, but the ability then to take the data that's been fully archived and create searches and queries after the fact is a huge benefit to any archive.
Yeah, in fact, I remember one of those customers 4 years ago, they had no idea what their downstream utilization was going to be. And over the course of that project, right, they're like, oh, we need this. Oh, we need this. And it just sort of snowballed and snowballed as that project continued. So yeah, totally makes sense. So HR customers not only need access to historical records though, but they want the access to be intuitive, right? That's another unique thing that we see with HR customers. Why is that familiar UI design so common?
Well, I think a lot of it has to be, they're not. A lot of them aren't, deep technical people. They're HR managers. They're focused. They're on what they do for their jobs is more about delivering back information to either past employees, current employees, managers, and so they like to see from the archive very similar situation as what they had in the source system. So that would be looking up employee information, getting their W-2s, and outputting reports just for the sake of data, like in an Excel format, doesn't really serve their job functions very well. So when we come to HR archives, they tend to be very detailed, their use cases, what they want to get, how they want to get the results back. They want to have that similar capability that they had in their previous legacy system, but also the new system. So again, because their job isn't to figure out how to write, SQL queries and mine data, right? That's really not their job. So that's the main reason. And again, the frequency too. They're going to be having to get this information out fairly frequently and in a timely manner. So that's another key thing. But yeah, so that's kind of it. There might be some other like more annualized things that they may have to fulfill that would be broader reports, not individual or employee reports, like audits and things of that nature that they also have to generate.
Yeah.
So again, the demands are higher.
And that's really amplified, right? For groups or customers of ours that are still undergoing their transition to the new HR system. As it relates to like geographically specific information, what do we find there, Kevin? Do we do complex geographical mapping?
Yeah, we haven't found much we haven't found much crossover. So when it comes to payroll, it's U.S. based. It's very country specific. So that's helpful from that perspective. And then we just do it by the country parameters where the data sits and where the data is generated. So haven't seen a lot of that crossover. The only thing that has come up on occasion is expats, and that's again more about how the company wants to deal with it and how they address that.
So the reason we share this context about HR and sort of relative to other application archives that our customers, you folks that are listening on the call may undertake, is that consumption of HR data is very important, right? And to some extent is complicated to achieve. We have competitors that simply say, put the data in the archive, and if you want to report or need a query, it'll be there for you. Figure it out later. And you may even have folks inside your organization that simply say, let's just lift and shift that into a SQL database. We'll take a copy and make it a read-only version that you can access whenever you want. You can start to see why this is never really a good strategy, especially making a copy of the data and putting it into a SQL-only instance. It's even more problematic, that is, when it comes to HR data sets. So the reason our competitors offer these options is because they know that producing those searches meet your requirements. That's the hard part. That's the reason we have the Ranis on our team that really sort of tie that together so that data becomes useful information. A business provides business value to an end user that doesn't necessarily have all that technical know-how of how to map and relate all that content on the back end.
Yeah, and and then Andrew, if you think about what an archive does, a good archive solution that is, it's basically taking disparate data sets from a multitude of different applications and their data repository, and essentially normalize that data so that the searches, queries, reports can be generated without any of the legacy application layers. So in a simple example, ADP EV5, right? You've got the data, but you no longer have EV5. So how are you going to make sense of that? And a good archive can take a multitude of applications from PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, ADP, M+, BioPlus, you name it, and still provide a fully functional common UI to access the data. And that's the very important part, because you want to be able to have a robust solution that can handle all kinds of data sets that no longer have that application intelligence with it. So you want that archive to replace that so that you can get the data back in a real meaningful way.
All right. Yeah, this is good information, Kevin. I want to transition a little bit to our approach, our implementation approach. Since we have years and years of experience with application archive, this includes many HCM systems, we frequently have a good idea how to approach an HR archival before actually we ever set foot in our customers' organizations. What I really like about the way we do it at P3 is that we meet our customers wherever they're at. And I recognize that actually may sound a little vague. The point is we kick off any archiving project by seeking to understand what your requirements are rather than just telling you this is how it's going to look. How would you classify that, Kevin? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And so we have a proven implementation methodology. We've been using it and refining it, for years, and it's proven successful time and time again. In fact, we've gone through it and we've looked at ways to optimize it, and it really is solid. And it all starts with the requirements gathering to really understand the use cases. So it's a collaborative effort. We start with templates and things like that, but we really want to hear from the customer how they're interacting with their current solution, how they expect it to see from the archive, so that we can fully understand their requirements. And Andrew, as you said, having done many HR archives in the past, we oftentimes have a pretty good inkling of where they're going to be going, right? So sometimes, and that really helps us kind of bridge the gaps, facilitate the conversations. So we're really not saying, oh, well, what's a W-2? What's a, benefit, of this nature or that nature. So we have a pretty good understanding as well. So we bring all that to bear. But then again, every customer is a little unique in their own way. So, we very well may need, they may have a need that we haven't addressed yet in the past, but it's not a problem, right? Because we fully understand the data. We fully understand the data, and it's pretty easy to begin the development and start producing, wireframe or previews of the screens and start working again in that collaborative fashion, so that by the time we get to, in our methodology, by the time we get to the testing phases, there really aren't any surprises there from the customer's perspective. And in fact, they've actually seen throughout some of the interactions what the experience is going to look like. So we don't even hardly do any training when it comes to preparing them. It's a little 30-minute session, and off they go. So and again, like I said, that follows our methodology that we've done not only for HR systems, but all kinds of different archivals.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, right? That's not to say that we don't walk in with a complete clean slate and no understanding of what the problem is that we're trying to solve. We have a preconceived notion about how to solve that problem because we've addressed most of these HR systems in our history already anyway. But we start by seeking to understand what our customers are looking for. And the goal there is really meeting you, like I said, where you're at. So let's actually transition and bring Rani into the conversation. So we're kind of drilling down now from this high level to the more tactical, what happens in the day to day. And Rani's really our hands-on experience, and she does these. She develops these HR projects, right? On again, feet on the street, on the ground, right in front of our customers. And she's really one of our experts, specifically for application archive. She has intimate knowledge of the systems and applications we have archive with. Is that right, Rani?
Yes, thanks, Andrew. Yes, I have an in-depth understanding of the complexities that are involved in managing, storing, and maintaining HR-related data in compliance with legal and organizational requirements. So these projects involved archiving a wide range of HR records, including payroll, performance evaluations, employee contracts, and compliance documentations. I have also had hands-on experience with designing and implementing data retention policies, working closely with HR teams to ensure smooth data migration and managing the security and integrity of sensitive employee information.
That's the devil in the details, folks, right? Compliance, data retention, those are the things that you generally think of last. Those are top of mind for people like Rani. So if it's okay with you, Rani, let's do some practical Q&A based on your hands-on experience. And let's start with the basics, right? Help me understand what type of HR professionals you typically work with during an archiving project.
So it really depends on how robust their legacy HR system is. In some cases, we work with the dedicated teams for payroll, benefits, or employment history. Other times, it's just a single point of contact handling multiple areas. So the level of involvement varies. Some HR teams know exactly what they need, while the others really rely on us to help define their access and the compliance requirements.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That kind of further highlights the importance of our customers finding an organization with experience that can partner with you, essentially our customers, to balance our solution capabilities against your requirements. And like we've said a couple of times already, HR is a little different from other business functions when it comes to archiving. What are some of the big challenges you see, Rani, when you're working with HR teams?
The biggest challenge often is the time, because HR teams are really busy managing payroll benefits, the compliance audits, and employee relations. So archiving projects can feel like a little distraction to them. So when we work with HR teams, we try to minimize their effort so they can just focus on their day-to-day work while we handle the heavy lifting part. And another challenge is the HR data is often scattered across multiple systems like
Yeah.
payroll, benefits, and ECM and other systems. So defining ownership and accessing rules can get a little complicated. For example, payroll might live in one system while benefits history is stored elsewhere. So when it comes to archive, so who decides how long to keep it, whether it is HR, legal, or IT? So that's the challenge we help to navigate. So we work through that with HR team so there's no confusion when the archive is really in place.
Yeah, yeah, and just that's a good point, Ronnie, because there was a few years back, we had a situation where we did PeopleSoft, right? But then they had a tremendously extensive Lotus Notes database library with a ton of ancillary HR
Yep.
content that they use to help manage their employees. So we were able to synthesize their Lotus Notes databases into their the same archive that their PeopleSoft HR data was in. So two very technically uniquely different archives, right? But we were able to fulfill both of those needs and make both data sets available to them.
Well, I noticed when Ronnie said time management of time, Ronnie, Kevin's ears perked up. I watched his eyes light up. As it relates to time, I know that's something you're always sensitive to, Kevin, right? Getting the decision makers into a room to make the choice is frequently the bottleneck. We see it all the time to the timely completion of projects. I'll bet you have an opinion here.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Andrew. The biggest bottleneck isn't the technology; it's aligning the decision makers, again, and getting their time, their resource time. So, like, for instance, if the HR team is in the middle of deploying a new HRIS system, archiving gets pushed down the list, which pushes us up against deadlines that are characterized by drop date, dead date from the legacy HR provider, right? You've canceled your service from ADP, or you've terminated your maintenance with Oracle or what have you. So but when we're talking about general archive, most of the requirements for a project are handled by IT folks and analysts and SMEs, and there's a lot of people surrounding that system. In our experience, HR is like a small group, small family, and the burden of deploying the new system, the burden of running their HR, programs and services, are all combined with also doing the archive. So they can't share the burden as much as other parts of the business.
Yeah, got it. So let's move on, Rani. Next question. What kind of commonalities do you see across the implementations that you've done?
The common things I see is the data classification, which includes employee personal information, payroll, performance, and salary budgeting stuff. And the other common thing is the data security, encrypting sensitive data, and implementing role-based access and restricting who can view what data. And the other main thing is the retention policies. So defining clear retention periods for different types of data, like keeping payroll records for 7 years and disposing data when no longer needed. So these are the common areas we come across.
Yeah, no, I feel like those should be classified as table stakes for anyone considering an HR archival solution, right? I mean, obviously, ingesting data with an auditing and chain of custody, providing familiar, easy to use access to that data, limited end user training, those are all critical. Delivering an affordable solution, right? But the ability to classify sensitive data, the ability to secure it, and use tools like encryption and masking within the UI to keep this data safe, make sure that the people who need access to it have the access to it, and more importantly, the people who don't have access cannot see that data. Those are critical. Like I said, I would classify those as table stakes for deployment. So within Platform 3, for example, we use role-based access control, and whenever possible, we're going to integrate with our customers' IDP, right, their security protocol, to simplify who has access to what. Of course, the ability to define, create, and manage comprehensive retention and disposition rules to make sure you're addressing those compliance requirements. Crazy stuff going on in the US. Obviously, these sweeping regulations across the US. I'm in Colorado, and we've got a Colorado protection. Obviously, CCPA was an early one. In Europe, we've got GDPR, and they're popping up Indiana, New York, and multiple places around the world. So yeah, those are all critical components to make sure you're addressing your compliance requirements. But let's not dive too far into that. Let's move on, Rani. Can you describe a day in the life of working with like an HR team on an archive project?
Sure. A typical day would involve like meeting with the payroll or HR teams to review a specific access needs, as you said, and also mapping legacy data to the new archive to ensure search screens reflect what they are used to, and also testing and tweaking searches and reports to confirm the HR users so that they can quickly find what they need, and addressing security reasons. So who should see what data and what needs to be masked and how the access should be controlled. So every project is different, but the common theme here will be making sure HR teams feel confident they'll still have access to what they need once the legacy system is retired.
Let's talk about data access for a second. HR teams really have different needs when it comes to searching for historical records. Can you explain the difference between like custom reports and search screens, Rani, and why HR teams care about that?
Custom screens, when it comes to custom reports, they are predefined layouts where users see search results in a specific format. So the reports can still be tailored with the branding, styling, or a structured output based on the compliance or internal guidelines. Whereas the search screens, they are more dynamic, allowing the HR users to search screens across multiple data sets and drill down into more additional details. Unlike rigid reports, search screens offer flexibility to filter, group, and also retrieve information quickly. So HR teams do care because they just don't need to see the old records, but it's about having the data in the right format and at the right time for the right purpose. So that could mean pulling a report for an audit, so finding an old W-2 when an employee calls with a question, right? So that's why we have these different kinds of reports.
Right. And for purposes of this conversation, a W-2 could be a PDF that's attached to that archive as a separate document, or it could be a piece of data that we need to format into something that looks like a W-2. So it's created dynamically based on the data that we find in one of the databases or one of the tables, right? We see both of those requirements. And more importantly, I think you see base requirements across deployments too. Correct, Rani? Like, I know we were talking. You and I actually collaborated a while back on, and I started building pre-sales demo solutions to demonstrate our customers because we had so much payroll activity at the moment. We collaborated on this master employee search where you perform a search for an employee. And then once you've got that employee information, then you can drill down into all their timesheets for the last, X period to Y period, or you can say, give me all their paycheck summaries or overtime reports over a defined time frame, right? Those are the kind of things that are kind of specific to HR people, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think you know what, we're kind of running short on time here. So let's go to final questions and then we're going to wrap this thing up. So Rani, let me pass it back to you for final question. Then Kevin, I'm going to ask you for any closing insights you might have. So HR is subject to strict compliance rules. What type of HR data needs to be archived and why does that matter?
So when it comes to archiving, there are a few key areas we usually focus in. One, employee records and HR admin. So where things like job history, performance reviews, and time off balances are taken care. And two, payroll and compensation. The payroll history, salary details, and tax stuff will be handled here. And the third one will be benefits and deductions. So here we keep track of things like overtime, bonuses, deductions, and benefits. But here's the thing, like HR can't just keep all this stuff forever. So every company needs a clear plan on how long to hold onto certain records and when it's okay to delete them. Like payroll records usually need to stick around for about 7 years, but medical records might have a different time frame. So the tricky part is to find that balance, making sure HR has access to what they need while also safely disposing the data that's no longer necessary.
Great point, Ronnie. One that ties actually nicely into our early comments about why it just doesn't make sense. It's not reasonable to migrate this data into a local SQL database, for example. Archive really must support policy-based retention and disposition and be subject to audit and reporting, right?
Right.
So this has been a really good discussion. I think hopefully our customers or our attendees today are finding value from it. We've covered really most of the fundamentals or many of the fundamentals of HR archiving, why it's different from other types of archive, and how HR teams consume archive data. Let me open it up, Kevin, for final closing thoughts from you before I close out.
Yeah, I'll just restate, what I said earlier about our implementation methodology. We have a proven method for deploying archives. We've done that for a number of systems, but we've done it for many HR data-related systems. So, we bring a lot of experience in that particular space, and applying our methodology. It really has been successful endeavors with our clients when it came to their HR data. I mean, they've been very pleased. They've gotten everything that they've needed. And, again, we can apply that to, any, I'm comfortable and confident that we could apply that to any customer with any HR system.
Right. Yeah. And that's good feedback, actually, Kevin. And to that point, right, I want to make sure that the reason we delivered this presentation today is I want to make sure that we call out things that people need to consider, things that we consider anytime we approach a project. But I also don't, it's not intended to scare anybody that big, hairy archive project that we have to address. Don't let archiving feel like a massive challenge, right? These projects are not rocket science. They're not going to break the bank. And the key really is preparation. Every organization that we work with has a unique need, but that's where we come in. We live, eat, and breathe this archiving, so you don't have to, right? At Platform 3, we've worked with organizations across multiple industries to ensure their HR data isn't just preserved, but it's also accessible, compliant, and easy to access. We have offices worldwide, including Minnesota, where our headquarters is. We have a Center of Excellence in Chennai. We've got Singapore, the UK, and more. Wherever you guys are, we're there to help. And really, if I was going to do a kind of a look ahead, I would say HR archiving is evolving as well, right? It's no longer just about storage. It's about smart access. You guys don't just want to store historical data. You guys need to search and analyze it and use it. And that's why we're putting energy into AI-driven search, automated classification of content, and really predictive insights. Those are becoming essential components now to any archiving project. And while I don't want to spill the beans just yet, we have some exciting developments coming soon, and hopefully we'll hop on another webinar and start delivering and introducing our customers to those. So in closing, really, I just want to say, if you're considering an HR archiving project and you don't know where to start or just want to understand best practices, reach out to us. We love to have a conversation. We're easy to get along with, and we're very approachable. Kevin, Rani, thanks again for your insight. Thanks for all your contributions to P3 and to our customers. And thanks for all you folks for joining today. I see dozens on the line here. Thanks for listening in. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Andrew.
Bye-bye.